There's no reason why that couldn't be your story.
You don't have an expiration date.
Ooh, I love that.
The actual pages. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
This is the Authors and Agents Podcast. Erin, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. I loved Plot Twist, and so let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, thanks, Rose. That's thank you for reading it. Anytime someone reads a book of mine, I'm like, wow, you took the time to read my book. It's so exciting. Um, so Plot Twist is the second book in my Hollywood series. The first book was called For Butter or Worse, and it was about a female chef in a male-dominated world, and she's on a cooking show, and it was enemies to lovers, if you know those tropes. So the second book is about her sister, Sophie, and Sophie is a romance writer working on her second book. So it's very meta. It's my second book. Um, she accidentally goes viral after a night out at a karaoke bar. She claims that love is not real, and this goes viral because she's a romance author. She's saying love isn't real. And in real life, she has never been in love and she's never been able to say those words, I love you. So she decides to go back to her former relationships and explore why she has this block around the words I love you to try and salvage her career and also fix her writer's block. And during that process, she connects with her landlord and best friend's brother, which is another romance trope.
The best trope.
The best. And so Dash is this former teen heartthrob from Hollywood royalty. He has taken a break from acting and he's gotten really deep into pottery. And he decides to help Sophie in exchange for her helping him. So he helps her with her TikTok presence and trying to kind of reclaim her identity as an author. And she helps him write a speech for his dad's Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. And in that process, they fall for each other. And it's really a story about acceptance and finding someone who accepts you for exactly who you are. And, for Sophie and Dash, they each have various trust issues. So they both deal with those in their own ways. But it was a really fun story to write. It also deals with a lot of sensitive topics. Like Dash is in recovery for alcoholism. So, it is a rom-com, but in all of my books, I tend to have these deeper subjects. So in For Better or Worse, Leo, my male lead, dealt with anxiety and panic attacks, which is something I've dealt with my whole life too. So, I do write these really fun books, but at the heart of them is also, these subjects that I find interesting and are very personal, and I like exploring those.
I think as a reader of rom-coms, I think that is such a wonderful combination, right? Like I love it when I can finish reading a rom-com and be like, "Oh my goodness, there were some heavy topics in there and I am going like it made me think about it." Like I have someone in my family who is in recovery from alcoholism, and I was just sitting there like thinking about, him and his struggle and his anxieties and different things, and I'm like, how did a rom-com make me think about this? I think that's pretty wonderful when it can be like, okay, I love this story, I love this couple, I get all the feels, and I'm left with something like more meaty to work through.
Yeah, there are all different kinds of romances, and some are just like pure light fluffy fun, and I love
Yeah,
those, and this has that, but yeah, also has those deeper subjects woven in.
definitely. I think you did a wonderful job doing
Oh,
both
thank
things
you.
very well.
Thank you.
So, so this is, book number two coming out for you. So exciting. So tell me a little bit about your journey up to this point to having now your second novel come out into the world.
So, I have loved books from a really young age. I guess what's interesting for me at least is like I had a really hard time reading as a kid. My mom had to
Mm.
hire like a tutor so I could catch up with my class, and um I think she was nervous I would never be able to read or something like that. But once I was able to read, I really like flew off with it, and books became part of my identity is, like escaping into books, reading them. I had not really considered writing books until high school when a teacher, commented on a paper of mine and said that I was a really good writer and should think about that as a potential career. And I was like, oh, it had not ever occurred to me that I could do something like that. Both of my parents are in the medical field, and so that was kind of where I think they thought I was headed. And as soon as someone gave me some encouragement about around a creative pursuit, that's what I ended up going for. So, it's not like I became a published author immediately. It took many, many years. So, um, I did jobs that were writing adjacent because I was pretty nervous to just take the leap and try writing something. Writing anything and putting it out there is super vulnerable because no matter what, you're going to get a rejection. Even
Yes.
published authors who you love and admire have gotten many, many rejections. Like that's just the reality of writing. Um, so, I worked in publishing as my first job out of college. I worked at Random House. I was like a little editorial assistant. Um, I worked at a management company for writers, like, agents who manage writers. I worked as a writer for BuzzFeed and and Funny or Die, all of these other places. So doing online writing. And eventually, I actually published two nonfiction books before I got into fiction. So
Mm-hmm.
I published something called Woman Skills, which was like a funny how-to guide, and then the Big Redhead book, which is a book for redheads because I'm a redhead.
Yeah.
And eventually, I really wanted to get back into fiction because I had always dabbled in it throughout the years. I would write a few chapters of something or, write a short story. And um, I just felt, I was actually probably what would be like the height of a lot of people's professional career. I was working at Netflix and I was working in their social media department. It was a super fun job. I got to like literally work with movie stars and like be on set for
So cool.
things. It was really cool, right? So I should have been happy and I wasn't. And so I had to really explore why I wasn't happy because I was like, this should be a dream job and I'm not happy and why. And it was just this pull that I had to get back into writing and I really wanted to write books. And so I saved up enough money for taking a year off from working to try and work on a book, and I quit my job, and that's what I did. That's how I ended up writing at least a first draft of For Better or Worse. And eventually I sold it, but it took years, from writing it to rewriting it to finding an agent, and
Right.
I ended up getting another corporate job in the meantime because I had to go back to work. I ran out of money. So that's kind of like it was like a really winding journey that I've had. I've had like so many careers and I'm in a position now where I'm very fortunate. I'm writing books and I'm doing what I love and it feels like I'm doing what I was meant to do.
Yeah. I think, I always ask this question, and every author's journey is a little bit different, but it's always kind of long. Everybody's journey is kind of long
Yeah.
because publishing is a long game. I mean, there are those
Hmm.
unicorns who it's very fast for them, but for most people, yeah, it's a year, years and years and years long. So now let's talk about your querying journey a little bit because querying is so hard. So tell me a little bit about how querying went for you and then maybe share like your top tip for other authors who are in the querying trenches right now.
Well, I did something that's probably not recommended, but I am super impatient. And so
Me
with
too.
For Butter, yeah, I mean, time is precious.
Yes.
So with For Butter or Worse, I had probably like two-thirds of the book done. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start querying. And if anyone requests this book, I will
I'll
just
finish
quickly
it.
finish it.
There you go.
But I was like, I didn't want to spend years and years working on a book that wasn't going to sell, that kind of thing, where I was like,
Yeah.
if no one is interested in this book at all, I will just move on to the next book. Like, but I don't want to spend, again, years on a book that won't sell. So I made a list of, I think it was 20 or 30 agents, and I found them by like, Googling and looking up authors who I loved and finding out who their agents were, looking at their submission guidelines. And I sent out 20 to start. And my attitude was sort of like, if no one is interested, that is a sign that this book is just not working and I'm going to move
Yeah.
on. So what happened was that I, of course, got a lot of rejections or like people not answering. And then I think I got a handful, maybe 5 responses being like, oh, let me see some pages, right? So they'll ask for like 50 pages, 20 pages. So I
Right.
sent those. And then I ended up getting 3 agents who wanted the full manuscript. So I was like, I better
Gotta
finish it. And
finish.
so I buckled down and I think I took like 2 weeks or something and just finished it and sent them what I had. And I sent it under the guise of, and I wrote this in my emails to them, but I was like, look, I love feedback, which I do. I was like, I'm happy to make whatever changes you want. I write quickly. And I was like, I'm very open to like working with you on this book. And so I had phone calls with each of those agents after that. And, they each gave me different notes. And so I just had to go with my gut on who I felt like I liked their notes best, basically. And
Yeah.
that's how I whittled it down.
Well, I think that's very unorthodox and quote
I
unquote
know.
against the rules, right? But
I
hey, it
know.
worked for you. And
It
and
worked.
I almost love it because I think so, like I thinking back to some of my querying journeys where I've spent, 2 or 3 years perfecting a book, revising or whatever, and then to query and have like one of mine, I got some full requests and different things, and it didn't end up working, but I could have probably saved myself a bit of time if I had
Yeah. I
maybe done it
mean,
the Erin way.
I know. I don't know that it's like for everyone, right? Like you have to be
No,
willing
no,
to then write the book if they
finish.
request it. But I will say like I on the flip side, I have watched friends who are writers who spend like 5 years on a book, and
Right?
that's not worth the return, like
No.
in any way. And I'm very like bottom line business oriented for myself because you have to, this is a business also on top of
Yeah,
being a creative pursuit and an art. You have to make money, and so you have to figure out really quickly, like, is this going to sell? And if not,
yeah.
like, let's move on to the next one. I'm not precious about that stuff.
Well, I think that is a very a different mindset to take, but I love it because a lot of it, I think it's a hard transition for querying authors from the the love of pouring something into your book, right? Like you're pouring yourself, you're pouring all this time, and then you have to switch, okay, yep, now I'm going to query it. That's a business transaction. And I think for a lot of authors, that's a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. Or if it's your first time and you don't know anything, you might not even realize kind of what you're getting yourself into. So I think it's a good reminder of like it's the start of a business relationship. If you're going to try to monetize your craft and what you're doing, you've got to change how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and I've really applied that to every book I've written where it's sort of like this is one out of many. Like I'm hoping for a long career. So if you're too
Yeah,
precious with a book, then you'll only write one book, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, you have to just be willing to move on and find a new story.
That's good advice because that can be hard too. I think as writers sometimes we're very, I mean, I have been emotionally attached to books, but yeah, if you're too precious with it, that can lead you down other paths that make it really hard to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like you kind of already answered this a little bit for me, but I'd love to know what's something you really hope that readers take away from Plot Twist besides acceptance. I know you kind of already chatted about that, but maybe
I think,
on another note.
yeah, I mean, I think something that I hope, um, and I've seen people respond well to is also the inclusivity that I tried to really put into the book. Sophie is pansexual, and her exes reflect her sexuality. And, I kind of intentionally made it so that her sexuality is at no point a plot point in the book.
Yeah.
She doesn't have like a big coming out moment.
Mm-mm.
Um, when Dash hears about her pansexuality and her variety of exes. It's not like he passes judgment in any kind of way. They don't have to have a long conversation about it. It's an accepted part of her. And I liked that because I wanted the world to feel like it was an inclusive, accepting place, um, and to not have that be something that hinders her. It's something that makes her who she is, and is a beautiful part of her. But I hope that when people read that, they feel seen and included, and yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
guess
it,
that's it.
I think that was done really well, and I think too I think it made her who she, I mean, it's who she was. It wasn't ever
Yeah,
anything that like you get hung up on the book. I think that is awesome. And
exactly.
yeah, people should be seen everywhere. Remember many times as a child seeing myself in writing and in books, and everybody should have that.
Yes.
Yeah. So my next question for you about you, I'd love to know who some of your favorite authors are and why you love them. Doesn't have to be
Well,
like all time, but just people
yeah,
you like to read.
I really love Alexis Hall, anything he writes. Boyfriend Material is probably like what he's most known for. He has many, many series, but he's a wonderful queer writer, and all of his writing is so funny. He's so great at dialogue. Um, I also love Courtney Kay. Her debut came out the same year that mine did, and she has two books out now. In the Event of Love is a great starter for her. Um, I love Rebecca Weatherspoon, who has a really wonderful cowboy romance series, if you're into
Love
that kind of thing.
cowboys.
Yeah, so, those are some of my favorites. And, I consume a lot of romance, but I also read all genres. So right now I'm reading something called Their Wicked Games, and I think it's by
Oh,
Joelle Wellington, but
hmm.
it's YA, and it's sort of, I think it might be a little bit like the Hunger Games is what it's getting
Yes.
toward, like Gossip Girl
Yeah.
meets the Hunger Games. So anyways,
Hmm.
it's been very fun.
I love that. It's good to read all kinds of things. But yes, I've seen and heard lots of people raving about these vicious games.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So you are writing, rom-coms, romance. If you were to genre hop and write something completely different, what would you want to
I wish I could write thrillers. I don't think I can, but
write?
I wish I could because I really like reading them. I have a terrible mind for those things. Like
Mm.
I'm the type of person, if I write or if I watch a horror movie or something, I'm like, who did it? Up until the very end when it's like very obvious who did it. I still don't know until they like point to the killer. But yeah, I wish I could write thrillers. It takes a certain mind, and I'm not good at puzzles, I guess. I don't know.
You're not good at puzzles that you're like solving on the go and there's like
Yeah,
people distracting you, throwing different pieces. Like try to make that fit, right? It
I could
definitely,
not. I could not.
yeah, it takes a different mind to weave all of that together behind the scenes and fake people out. Yeah.
Yeah, nope.
I'd love to know what is some bad writing or publishing advice that you've heard or that someone's given to you.
You know, I think about this a lot because there was this time when I was working at a company, and one of the kind of like senior leaders there, uh, we were talking about people writing essays there, and their point of view was that either you are a writer
Mm,
or you're not, and it can't be taught and it can't be improved upon. And I really disagree with that, because the writer I was when I was 20 is very different from the writer I am now in my late 30s. Um, and I know without a doubt that I'm a much better writer now because of all of the time and effort that I've put into it. And I think writing is a muscle and it's a craft.
yeah.
And yes, some people are maybe naturally better storytellers, like maybe they grew up and like were reading constantly and all of that stuff, so maybe they have a leg up. But I also believe it's something that can be taught and improved upon, And just because you wrote something shitty when you were 20 doesn't mean that you're not going to write something fantastic later on. And so, I feel like, not that that's advice necessarily, but I feel like for people
Yeah.
listening, if like you just need to keep practicing, it really is a muscle and you have to exercise all the time to keep it up and to get better at it. So, the hardest part of writing a book is starting it and finishing it. And so you have to just keep at it.
I think that that's such a good thing to remember because I think we all hear that. Or, like the qualifiers of you're only a writer if these things apply to you or you're doing these things. But yeah, there's people out there who are just gifted writers and get it from the beginning. But yeah, I think you can practice, you can study, you can learn. And I mean, we learn with every single thing that we write. So I think that's definitely something good to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just have a couple questions left for you, just kind of about you again. I'd love to know what's something you like to do when you're not writing.
Well, I really love running. I'm one of these like terrible
Oh,
people that loves running.
Erin, no.
It's really obnoxious, I know. Like a masochist. But I have been a runner since I was like in middle school, and then in high school I was on cross country team. And this is not to say I'm good at it. I'm not. I'm very slow, but I love going for a run and being able to clear my mind that way. So that's something, unfortunately, that I really enjoy doing. And then probably to counter that, I love baking. And
Oh yeah,
so,
those go well
I
together.
bake a lot. I think so. Like you burn a lot and then you can like eat more, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
really know how that works, but I do.
I love it. What's your favorite thing to bake?
Cookies. I am
Mm.
really, really good at baking any kind of cookie, but I have a 3-year-old and she loves eating cookies. So
Oh, I
we
bet
bake
she
a lot
does.
together. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. My 3-year-old also loves cookies,
I
but
bet.
we are not runners, but lately we have started family bike rides.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a good way to get our exercise, but
So do
without.
they like ride their own bike or are they on the back of your bike?
So my almost 1-year-old is on the front of my bike. The three
Okay.
year old is in my husband's trailer, and then our
Okay.
two older
Whew.
kids they ride their bike. So we're
Oh
just a
my
big
Lord.
gaggle around
Yeah,
our
that's
neighborhood.
great. That is great. I love that.
Yes, but it's fun, something we can do all together. But I have never been a runner, never. My husband likes to run, at times, but I've never
I
been one of
know.
those
I
people.
think there's something I don't know, masochistic about it, but I love it.
Well, good. I'm glad you love it. And the people who do love it, they talk about it and they've got the runner's high and all of that.
The
I
runner's
just,
high, I think that's why I like it. It is
yeah.
really unfortunate. Yeah.
Well, you're kind of self-aware about it, so that's good, I
Yeah.
guess.
Hmm.
Well, my last question for you. I'd love to know what your favorite book is right now. This is not your favorite book of all time, just something you've read recently that you want other people to know about.
I really loved this book, For Her Consideration by Amy Spalding. It's really fun. It takes place in Hollywood, and it's the basic gist is like, what if you met a famous celebrity and they fell for you? It's just pure fantasy fun.
Oh, I love
Um,
it.
and yeah, it has a lot of food scenes too, so it'll make you hungry.
I love food scenes in books.
Me too.
I just read an arc of Yes Chef, and I don't know who the author is off the top of my head,
Oh,
but it was very much like that. She's a chef in Paris, and all of it is like food, little descriptions of food and all the food they make. And I was like, I'm starving while I'm reading this book.
wow. Yeah, I just thought of The Bear, like that show. Yes,
Yes,
Chef. Woof,
yes.
good timing.
Yes. Well, Erin, thank you so much. I'm so excited for people to read Plot Twist because it is amazing, and I'm
Well,
really
thank you.
excited to see what book number 3 holds for you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.